Good afternoon, beloved community. I'm Melissa Miller, host of The Chosen Heroes, and thank you for being here with me today. Let's go ahead and let's kick off with targeted justice news and review for this week.
A government whistleblower is someone that worked as an employee of the government and wants to blow the whistle. We applaud you. Your questions have been answered many times in our newsletter. We are not going to hold your hand. If you worked for the government and want to blow the whistle, there are certain things you must do to protect yourself. For people contacting targeted justice thinking they will be anonymous, here is what you are actually doing. You are renewing our illegal FISA warrants and yours because you are mind-controlled and being set up. If you are a whistleblower that worked for the government, there is a correct method to do that. Read our website and newsletter. You are placing yourself at risk if you do not follow the rules for government whistleblowers. Get a whistleblower attorney or a whistleblower organization to help you. But do not trust them. Have someone relay questions. Do not reveal details of what you know until you have read what Ed Snowden advises. This is not legal advice. Seek an attorney.
To check out the numerous technical papers on Havana syndrome, check out Dr. Len Baer's academia website. Cup your ears for 60 seconds and listen for the popcorn. If you can hear the pops, you are likely a targeted law-abiding citizen. It is the cell towers being used as a backup tracking system on targeted law-abiding citizens.
Unacknowledged special access programs, or USAP for short, were apparently set up by criminal Vice President Nelson in the 1970s. This is the method used for isolating people that have knowledge of these illegal SCIF programs. Even the president does not have a security clearance that gives him access. This was deliberate. Some congressmen and senators may believe that their security clearance prevents them from discussing or disclosing USAPs. Wrong. All USAPs are unconstitutional and illegal. We need senators and congressmen to boldly expose and shut down this illegal architecture and return us to the U.S. Constitution.
There's a new support group for targeted law-abiding citizens in Canada. They meet on the first Saturday of every month. Contact Andrea for details. We need international podcasters. If you live outside the United States, here's your chance to help shut down the targeting program. If you would like to volunteer for targeted justice, please send an email to tjustice2@proton.me. Put podcast in the subject line.
Targeted Justice found that the best way to reduce the hacking on your computer by 80% is to remove the Wi-Fi chip and use Ethernet cables to your router. Also remove the Wi-Fi chip from the router. Look online for diagrams that show how to remove the Wi-Fi chip for your brand. The Wi-Fi chip is about the size of a postage stamp. Usually, it requires that you lift one side of the chip to a 45-degree angle and then slide it out diagonally. It will say Wi-Fi on the chip. Caution, this may void your warranty. Be sure to ground your hand before touching components inside the laptop. Look it up on a search engine.
Target Source LLC offers products that might help with your V2K, RNM, and implants. It has clearly helped some targeted individuals.
We're having a banner contest in Washington, D.C. Send us your best banner ideas for Targeted Action 2025. If the board approves it, we will have it printed and shared in D.C. Keep in mind how many words are on a billboard. It should be read within 3 to 5 seconds.
The CIA-sponsored research aimed at identifying and studying highly suggestible individuals, primarily through Project MKUltra, a covert program focused on behavioral modification and mind control techniques that ran from 1953 to the early 1970s. This research often centered on hypnosis, suggestibility, and the use of drugs or environmental manipulations to enhance or measure these traits, with the goal of applications in interrogation, behavioral control, and psychological operations. Calling all digital warriors. Please like, share, and repost this video on all social media. We're still looking for volunteers. What's your skill set? Let us know how you can help by emailing us at tjustice2@proton.me and put volunteer in the subject line. Are you looking for more targeted justice content? Go to Rumble, and that is where our channel is located. We have t-shirts, cups, merchandise, and more at our online store by following these links. You can either buy a gift or get something for yourself. We are a non-profit organization. Please consider donating online or sending us a check. All donations are tax deductible. Thank you again for watching this video. God bless. God bless. God bless.
Shout out to Sean, who does the targeted justice videos. He also does the promo videos and the shorts for the Chosen Heroes. He's so talented. So thank you, Sean, for all your efforts and everything you do for this community. We have a very special guest here today with us. Her name is Olivia James, and she was born into the programs by a family of drug traffickers that had ties to a military program. And Olivia was trauma trained in programs that mirrored MKUltra and Monarch, where her mind was split to create altars used for missions on Earth and in space. Within the spaces created within her mind, each altar was programmed to complete various jobs, missions, and tasks. And each persona possessed special knowledge and skills. She was used for espionage, occult, beta, and corporate programs. And Olivia's main focus is finding her memories and using them to heal her altars, hoping that her bravery and memories can assist others. Olivia is a talented author of the Gray Mouse series of books. The first in the series was Sex, Space, and Mind Control, and the second, latest released, is called Purgatory. These books expand upon her personally buried memories that began to resurface after seeking hypnotic regression sessions. Through the sessions, she was able to begin learning the truth, along with what she endured in the programs. I want to play one of Olivia's videos that she created herself, that explaining her experience as part of her intro before we bring her up to the stage.
Of course, this sounds unbelievable, but this is the truth. My truth. This experience of a life of mind control is one of pain, trauma, sadness, and pure awakening. Before my memories flooded back to me, I was sleeping through life, an altered form of thought and expression. The place where I experienced trauma-based mind control was a fully functioning facility of agony. This is no hallucination of the mind. I was physically there as a tormented individual, pigtails and all. My misery was an extension of my father's cowardice. He wanted to stay out of prison for his crimes. He could not commit to protecting me. He signed me over to ensure his safety and security. He allowed those three-letter and shadow government agencies to dictate how my life would begin and end. He was not strong enough to love me in his lifetime. The MKUltra programmers used my own emotions and insecurities against me. I was the unlovable one in my family, a black sheep of discomfort. The main programmer was a woman. She seemed dedicated to her advancements in what she thought were measurable outcomes of creating a Monarch asset. This is how the Gray Mouse was born. Out of fear, self-loathing, and desire to stay hidden. I wanted to journey inward, roaming those mysterious worlds created by the broken pieces of me. I only knew my programmer as Mrs. W. Names were unimportant, especially for the victims. They took our names from us and assigned us new identities, hundreds at a time. They created an army within us. Each altar was programmed to complete various missions, tasks, and directives, based on the agendas of those in power, private military and mercenary groups. They want complete control of this world and others. Their reach does not stop at the edge of this earth. They have extensions everywhere, leaving a trail of damaged souls. The programmer was successful in her endeavors. There were only 2 participants in this program. One major goal was syncopated dissociation. She used trauma-based methods to ensure a specific result: complete annihilation of the psyche. The impact on Olivia and Jacob was a full sleep for the original self. There was no rest, but a prison for who I was supposed to be. Jacob and I were able to dissociate to an extreme level, leaving the pain of the body behind. My success for them was my lack of response to pain. I no longer felt, I no longer needed. I no longer wanted anything except what the programmers wanted for me. Their goals were my undoing. It has taken a lifetime to return to that original injury. My memories are so suppressed that I still struggle to find the emotion attached to each scene of that damage. I look back and forward to what happened to me. A double and triple life of the unknown. I will keep searching. Full disclosure is the way.
Well, if anybody has the time to check out the videos that Olivia posts on her X account, I highly urge you to. I will be displaying her social media accounts. She also has Substack. So without further ado, let's bring Olivia up to the stage. Hi, Olivia. So glad that you could join us here today. And again, your writings, you know, these your videos, those are excerpts from your books, and they really do tell the story and resonate with so many that are victims of mind control and part of the programs. So thank you for your bravery in disclosing this information and being with us here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and so can you let me bring up to the stage. I'm going to bring up your intro slide too. All right. So can you tell me, you know, again where it all began? I believe in our conversation that we had previously, it all began when you were 7,
Yes.
and explain again to the audience of how it came to be that your father decided to hand you over to the government for these programs and the reasoning why he did this.
Yes. So I always start, and here's my disclaimer first. This is my personal experience, my personal perspectives. So everyone has the right to do their own research and have their own opinion on any of the information I provide. I wouldn't force anybody to believe anything I do, but I just wanted to make sure I said that. This is a personal journey for me, but I also like to share in order to help other people. So I always start by saying I had interesting parents, and my father, he was recruited very young into military intelligence. He was about 18 years old, and he was a code breaker, and he learned German very quickly in about 6 months, and he was working on the German-Russian border. And when he came out of the military, he got involved with what now they call cartels, but back in the 60s, they kind of considered it more of a crime syndicate. And if anybody knows anything about the drug trafficking trade in the 60s and 70s, then you know that there was a lot of possible letter agencies that were working alongside some of those crime syndicates in order to bring large amounts of drugs into the country. And so my father got involved with those cartels in order to do that job. And he used a boat, car, bus, and he also knew how to fly a plane. So him and my mother at a very, very young age were making quite a bit of money doing this. And what had happened is that he ended up becoming addicted to his own product. He became extreme heroin addict due to the amount of drugs that he was bringing across, and he started messing things up. He was missing drops. He wasn't making the appropriate connections like he used to be. You know, he was reliable before, and he had lost that reliability. And in order to kind of scare him, they started doing these like mini raids of his home. They did one raid and nothing happened, but it was just kind of a scare. And on the second raid, after he didn't straighten up, he actually got arrested. And you know, it was pretty dramatic. They, you know, crashed through the gate and, you know, ran inside the house, you know, beat him up, and you know, all that. And it was a very public trial. It was in all the newspapers and things like that for a very long time. And at the end of the trial, all they said was that they had the wrong person, and they let him go, and they gave him a local government job. So if anybody, I mean, just common sense, it's not normal. You know, it's not a normal
Right,
thing to
right.
just all of a sudden, after you've been seen as you know, a major drug trafficker and heroin addict, that all of a sudden, oh, never mind, we have the wrong person. Here's a government job. It's just not normal. And, you know, that's just what it is. And
Mhm.
Can some of that be proven with court records? Yes, that can be proven. Do I need to prove it right now? No, but it can be proven, in terms of that. I even remember myself seeing when I was young, seeing some of the newspaper clippings and things like that. So,
Mhm.
but, my father and mother both were very tight-lipped about that prior life. I was just a baby when all this was going on. And
Mhm.
what I had come to find out is the reason why he stayed out of prison is because he had to sign something over, and what they asked him to sign over was me. So he allowed them to take me into their programs, in exchange for his freedom. And like I say, his cowardice and his fear of going to prison is what, caused me to be, situated in, MKUltra, Monarch, and all the extreme trauma. So that's kind of how it started, is with my parents.
Wow. I mean, and I know as a child, how did you reconcile the fact that your father did this to you at the time when you were taken, and you were taken over to like some type of psychiatric research facility, correct? And
Yes.
so how did you reconcile with that, or how did I mean, that had to be devastating. You're taken from your parents, you're in a strange facility, research facility. Can you describe that to us?
Yes. And I really didn't have full memory of this until about 4 to 5 years ago. So it's a more recent discovery. Not that I haven't known that my life was weird, the whole time. I've
Mhm,
known that. There's
mhm,
obviously, just because of who my parents were, I knew that I didn't have a normal life. That wasn't something that I even pretended to say. So I didn't really have the memories until recently, in my opinion. So what I discovered, and when I did discover this, it just exploded to me. It came back in huge spurts of a mixture of like conscious recall. I also used meditation to get some of this. And then further on, I did hypnotic regression and remote viewing now. So that's
mhm.
kind of the steps I use in order to expand on any memories that I come to me. Even if, like today, if I were to have a big chunk of memory come back to me, I would use remote viewing to expand and verify for myself,
Right,
particularly for myself, that it was exactly what I think it is, So I kind of do a double layer of validation just for myself, not for anyone else, just to make sure that I know that what, I'm experiencing is firm in my mind. So what the memory was that I saw myself, and I'm about 6 or 7 years old, and they took me to a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast, and that hospital is no longer open. But when it was open, it was a kind of like a self-sufficient facility. They had underground tunnels, they had their own, farms and everything, so they didn't need a lot from the outside world. They functioned on their own. It's almost like a small city, and
mhm,
the program that I was in, they had us kind of like in like a separate building, and it was a very small program, and it was just two of us. And it's because they had very particular um, goals that they wanted, and they had a particular goal for certain things that they wanted us to do. And in this particular program, it was and the strangest thing, a lot of people, when you're thinking about targeting, we have this vision of males doing this programmer was a female, and she was an older woman. And I grew up very poor after my father kind of got rid of his trafficking business. There was no money. We grew up very poor. So we grew up in a really bad neighborhood. So when I was with her, she kind of almost seemed like ethereal to me, because I didn't grow up around people like her. She's very classy. She always wore this really pretty like white satin pantsuit, and she always had her hair pinned up with these really pretty combs and barrettes and things. So it just looks so she just had a different vision to me than it's something that I was used to. And it's weird to even mention that, but that's something that sticks in my mind, the way I viewed her, But I think sometimes they project certain images just in terms of how they can relate to us and build our trust, only to betray us, with that
right.
same action. It's the only reason they do it, in my opinion. So at this particular psych hospital, they wanted us to complete something called syncopated dissociation. And that goal was to have me and this other child try to dissociate at the same time. And they would use something that we call systematic abuse. And that was a mixture of sexual, physical, emotional, and psychological abuse in different ways. And they would made it so where the activities would change every 15 to 20 minutes. And this went on for quite some time. And at the end of about, I don't know, it must have been like a month or two that me and this other child, they called us prize pupils because we took to the abuse and trauma. That means we stopped responding to any pain and we didn't have an emotion. You could be harmed and we didn't have an emotion to it because we learned that any reaction would just cause more harm. And, they completely shattered our psyches, like to where we didn't have anything left, in my opinion. And they had to rebuild it back up, and they would put these pockets in us, and these pieces and fragments and compartmentalized parts of my brain are what created different alters. And I actually had created 118 alters. And I did want to say, people think that, dissociative identity disorder is the result of this. I want to say mind control way more complex than just DID. It's not just DID. There was so much, and I only say that is because of with the work I do in order to expand on a lot of these memories and information. I've been able to see within and look inside the alters to see that it's not just the fact of changing into a personality. These different pieces have created their own worlds inside the mind, and the mind is insanely complex.
Mhm.
It's more than I could ever have imagined to see. So there's a lot more to it than just having a personality disorder based on this trauma. It's way more complex than that. Um, and so she was using and I call her Mrs. W. She was using LSD, electroshock therapy, lots of hypnosis, and lots of, physical trauma, that kind of thing, to create, you know, these operations and these goals. And I believe she considered this to be a success. She
Mhm.
considered us to be successful at being able to dissociate to an extreme level. And that's still something that I can do if, if I really wanted to. I could stare off into. I'm just saying, if I were, felt like there was some type of overwhelming anxiety or emotion that I wanted to get away from, I could stare off into maybe even the numbers on our microwave, and I could make myself dissociate. I paralyze myself, and that ability kind of stays with me. And I consider it an ability now. I don't consider it a curse. For me, I consider it an ability. Like, I can trance out into different areas just because of that. So I kind of have made the negative into a positive for myself in that way.
I can kind of relate to that, and I think, being 13 years targeted, and I think others in this community could as well. When the torture becomes so unbearable in moments, it's almost like we have to disassociate from it in order to just survive in that moment, and to not, like what you had said, reaction really feeds it. And it's, I can see how, you were led to disassociate from it, because it just brings on more by pleading, or by trying to negotiate. We go through all of those different phases of, ways to remove what is being happening in that moment. But that's why I call it, you got your counter measures, whether it be, if it's something being auditory toward you, then you bring in a counter of auditory, whether it be music or focusing on a fan running or a noise outside, because you can't let what is being projected at you be the center stage. And that's the goal, and the reaction is for it to become the center stage at that moment. So I can definitely resonate with that. If you don't mind, I'd like to play your second introductory video, because
Sure.
it's such the imagery with the message it's very powerful, and I think this community can certainly resonate with it as well. So
Thank you. Yes.
yes, I'm going to take off the slide for right now and bring up the video.
MKUltra is just one of the tactics used to empower those shadow agencies in charge of this world. I have not found anyone that truly knows who controls everything here. It seems to be several factions, or secret groups of people pulling the strings behind the scenes. They never show their faces and remain hidden. Those factions that utilize MKUltra assets vary according to each agenda. Some of the companies I was forced to work for include private military, private intelligence, occult families, and mercenary groups. They each hold ideologies according to their perceived values, goals, and traditions. Their beliefs guide them towards myths of their importance and power structures. There are battles for leverage and position happening all the time. Those companies that rise to the ranks of elite status are targeted by competing parties. The deep state agencies contract with mercenary and intelligence groups to blackmail them. They often send an asset to gather intelligence, steal, or change information to obtain the necessary evidence for threats. They choose an asset based on codes found in the file along with availability, profile, and location. They monitor their assets after they reach retirement and use them if needed. Many are coded for re-entry just as I was. That meant that they could come and take me without my permission at any time for any mission. They would use various techniques for asset activation. Each asset is trained differently and has distinct responses to codes or symbols. Some react to sounds, tones, songs, and frequencies. Others react to visual symbols, lights, and written words. One mission I was assigned to delivered spoken codes. They whispered the phrase to me and I just knew what to do. I began to walk and move differently, following invisible directives that accompanied a secret phrase only my mind knew. I had to complete the mission to perfection. Once the job was initiated, they told me to go find your father. This is not what you think. It is an instruction. It meant that I needed to get back to home base immediately. Something changed within the mission, and we had to leave. The mission was over with no questions asked. Many lost codes and phrases are living within the inner matrix of the altered mind. It only takes a sound, word, or flashing image to change everything. Keep searching. Full disclosure is the way.
Wow. And you had, can you give some examples of some of the projects or missions that you were assigned to? Like you said, there was a variety. Some of these were
Yes.
military, some were occult related, some were other government entities and their associates. Can you give some examples of that?
Yes. So they used me particularly in my gray mouse altar. They used it for what I consider corporate espionage. And there's so much of this going on, and it's contracted for different factions, different private military, different mercenary groups. They contract this. And one of the things, well, I remember the one of the missions that was super, this was probably, I don't know why this gives me so much anxiety. I think it's because something got messed up in the mission, and it still stays with me, that because they're so serious about the level of perfection they need for these jobs, that you can't mess up things. And that's why I think this particular memory always kind of stuck out to me. And it was, they had me and 3 other girls, and I particularly did not like working with other people because once you include other personalities and things like that, it's easier for the mission to get messed up, in my opinion. And for each mission, there is no option for failure, um, because they threaten you. It's with threat of death if you don't complete this properly. So it's always gives us anxiety, and you have to kind of cover that up with your altars and things like that. But one particular mission, they had me and 3 other girls. We were to go into this large, it was kind of like a big, huge building for a media corporation, and they wanted us to steal something from their server room. And that's usually part of the corporate espionage. You either go and steal something, change something, or input something. It's always one of those things. And you wouldn't think that, oh, I'm just infiltrating these businesses and that it's not that dangerous. Yes, to me it was the most dangerous work. That was the most dangerous, because people would kill over money. They just do. And that's how they try to battle each other, is with taking money away, blackmailing, threatening to, get them whatever, take their, I don't know, their reputation and destroy their reputation and things. There's so many different ways, and these people are terrified of having that. And it's just, that's how they work behind the scenes. Is that's the war behind the scenes. It's over money. And so we went into this building, and it gives me anxiety just even talking about it. Like when I went in the building, we were masquerading as kind of like a cleaning crew, and nobody, because of the training we've had, nobody would suspect us. We're not allowed, there's no allowance for to let anyone suspect you. It had to be perfect. So even it's so detailed down to, and they detail it down in your mind, with the altars and things, that everything, every little move I make is calculated, to the way I walk, to the way I look, to the way I look at people, how long I look at people, what I'm holding in my hand. Am I wearing a badge? How am I holding the badge? Everything is to make yourself look non-threatening and be able to get in and out with no issue. And being a cleaning person, nobody kind of paid attention to that. Nobody pays attention to those people, and they would never know. They would never suspect that us that we're doing this, we're working for this type of agency. They'd never suspect it, especially by the way we look, everything. There's no way. So, and even during the day before we went to do this job, there was like a bar right outside, right next to it. And that's a lot of the people that worked in that office building. They would go down to that bar and have a drink, for happy hour. And so we kind of did this. It's almost like gathering intel. We just went there and hung out and just kind of, you keep your ears open. And if you activate a certain particular altar, most of us have like one altar that has a photographic memory, and that's how you record information. So if you're recording information constantly, and you lock it away in your mind, so the only way to be debriefed is with a code or some type of phrase that the people who claim control over you, they know the phrases, and that's how they can obtain the information, and they keep it locked tight shut. So if you were to get caught or something and somebody were to kind of like interrogate you, you really would not know, because the information would be so far back inside your mind. You would need like some type of hypnosis in order to grab that information. So it's locked away. So, and that's like a secondary like protection measure for the information, that you won't be able to grab it without some type of, deep debriefing with hypnosis. So we went into the building and we were so close to completing the mission, and something went wrong. I don't feel like it was me. I think it was one of the other girls messed up something, and we ended up having to go down an elevator shaft to get out of the building. And when we went outside, they knew we had messed up, and the van that was supposed to pick us up was gone. So I didn't waste any time. I didn't wait for them. I just, I had like a little hoodie with me, and I just put it up over my head, and I just started walking as fast as I could, and I got out of there. They wouldn't suspect me, but I don't know what the other girls did. They had messed up something. So we had, messed that mission up. And what we did find out, though, this was really strange. This big, huge media company, they claim to be Satanists. So I just thought that was interesting. And, I don't have an opinion about it either way, but I just thought it was interesting. And because I remember seeing, this name of this company on a lot of different magazines and things. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, it's becoming more and more apparent these days how a lot of these, celebrity and of course, media and these players, right, do have an occult tie to them, and it just seems to be coming out more and more. Can you describe before we get into, how you were put into retirement? What did you begin to learn once you went from one mission to another? And if you want, if you feel comfortable sharing with another example of a different mission, that would be great too. But the handlers so each mission probably had a different set of, one person or maybe multiple that were a handler over that mission, and those that were participants.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the corporate espionage, sometimes they would have us be like servers at a party. Like we had one where there was a politician, and it was from down south, and he was having this huge party, and we were just servers. And there was men in this one. It was a couple of the assets were men, and it was just the fact of getting something off the computer in the house. That was it. And you spend the whole day like serving people, and
Mm-hmm.
then once you got the computer, we got what we needed and we were out. It was like an easier, a lot of the work kind of was like similar to that, but still it's very dangerous. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing we had to do. What I found out is that there's a lot of this sounds really crazy, but some of the female assets, they're getting jobs as like nannies or au pairs in order to
Mhm.
gather intelligence on certain people. And some of these people are very, very wealthy, some of the elites, and they're hiring these outside, you know, nannies or au pairs for their children. And these people are, some of these people are actually assets. So they're gathering intelligence, maybe possibly looking into some of the records they have, things like that. So people think it's not as safe as you think, pulling other, depending on how much money the person has, that kind of, I know that happens a lot too. And just a lot of the missions were, some of them were beta work. I was going to explain beta work. So what beta work is they have me portray a particular role, and my job was to infiltrate somebody's life. So they would provide me with what we call a mark, which would be like your target person, and you infiltrate that person's life in various ways. And a lot of the ways when you're doing beta work is as kind of like the role of maybe a girlfriend or somebody they're dating. So I
Mhm.
would take on that role, and they would have no idea that I was gathering intelligence. And I had to just get information. And a lot of, obviously when they become comfortable with you, they start to talk more and be more open, and that's how we get the information. And I'm constantly recording it with, one of my alters. So I don't need to have anything written down. It's a less of a risk to get caught doing anything, because you could just record it with your mind, photographic memory.
Wow, and I think that truly does resonate with quite a few targeted survivors, is that they do bring in people to um, you know to lure people. They place people into your life to get to know you, to build up trust, and then that is where all of these symptoms of targeting start to unwind and unfold. So it just seems like, from what you're describing, this is kind of like, just, it's part of the big picture. There are people who are experiencing different symptoms, but there's commonalities. And from your perspective, through your lens, right, is that, okay, this is bigger picture. They're taking young children, fragmenting, and minds, and programming into the altars with different knowledge and skills each one possess, right, to
Yes.
use and to act out these missions. And it's all about gathering intelligence in one form or another. And a lot of it, in the cases of the targeted community, I think is just digesting how average civilians, or different variety of civilians that are read into these unacknowledged special access programs, and gauging how they react to these trauma induced methods. Can you
Yes.
explain, you know, like the handlers? I know you and I had talked about that, and
Yes.
their perspective of it, and how they could do this to innocent people with no remorse.
Yes. So throughout the last few years, I've been able to kind of like rediscover some of the abilities that I had. They suppress your memories a lot. So a lot of the times you don't, sometimes you might be doing things like I might be personality profiling, or might be gathering intelligence just in my normal life and not know why. It's just the programs keep running. But I was able to rediscover my ability for remote viewing and transmediumship, that kind of thing. So with that particular ability, I work very closely with a hypnotherapist, and we have done these sessions in order to further expand on this. And I was able to infiltrate some of the handler divisions in my own handler in general. And I found out that he's on, he's also on the East Coast, kind of farther up in the Eastern area. And these people, okay, so they have a lot of us, they're targeting a lot of us, because of what we know. But these people, when I saw them, so different from what anybody would think. they consider the handler division. These guys were just remote handlers sitting in a chair behind a computer with a headset on. That's how they're targeting us. And a lot of us think it was something more. And yeah, there's more. They sometimes add different pieces, but the main, targeting it's through technology. And a lot of these handlers, what I've discovered is they're using a cover of an insurance company. And each handler sometimes hold up to a caseload of 33. And that's just something I learned. It has nothing, I don't know the specific why they chose that number. It could be less than that.
Mhm.
It's just that's what I've discovered. And it's almost because that's their job. And they even tell me, they get paid very well for what they do. They have no problem with it. And I've discovered that a lot of them also have specific abilities, and they were in MKUltra themselves, and they were put through these programs to become handlers and to carry out this job. And that's what they do. And so, they kind of have trained themselves to have no emotions over what they do. And they try to, manipulate you and say, well, if you don't want me to be, take over your case, then somebody else will come and take it over and they'll be worse than me. That's actually what one of the handlers said. Do you want me to, I can resign from your caseload, but the next person will be worse. They say things like that.
Mhm.
And when I infiltrated his home, I stood behind him and he couldn't tell that I was there, obviously, because I'm doing this remote viewing. But when I put my kind of like energy hands on his shoulders, he has some type of telepathic ability in my opinion, because he knew I was there and I saw him typing. And what he typed, it said the asset is combative and presenting with ill intentions, and that measures would have to be taken. That's exactly what he typed. And that he said he would impact my spleen and cause tremors within me in order to stop me from trying to reach out, doing this remote viewing, trying to look for information and get information for people. They've kind of caught on that I've learned how to do this. And most recently, when I'm starting to do sessions, I'm getting infiltrated by other remote viewers, coming into my session and trying to stop me and, scare me and do different things in order to stop me from seeking out information.
And for those not aware of the term remote viewing, this is something that the military has taught.
Yes,
This was a special project. So this was, correct me if I'm wrong, is that remote viewing? That is Project Stargate.
I believe so. I don't remember the term Stargate for my particular remote viewing ability. I don't know. I still haven't got the memory of how I came to be doing remote viewing. Only I know that I can do it mixed with other different abilities in order to make it to where I'm seeing a lot. I'm getting a lot of information, and I'm actually speaking to these handlers. And
Mhm.
I want people to know I'm not a handler. I have no connection to handlers. I don't want to have connection to handlers. I'm taking a huge risk in remote viewing and infiltrating these agencies and getting these secret documents for other people. I'm getting this information for the world. So sometimes when I say that I can talk to handlers, they think that I'm, a handler or connected to handlers. That's not the case. I'm risking a lot to get this information for you all. And it there's a, whether we like it or not, there's a lot of this is real. I'm not saying a lot of this is real because I know people will have their different opinions about it. I'm saying from my personal experience, I've seen it with my own eyes. I felt it with my body, my heart, my eyes, everything have seen this. And the handlers are real, and they're sitting behind chairs. They're just a bunch of nerds sitting in a chair on a computer. So less to be afraid of than we think. And sometimes I feel like when I saw that for myself, I dropped a lot of the fear that I had about it, because I was being targeted heavily in a lot of different ways. And when I saw it was just some guy sitting in a chair, it's just transformed my idea of who I think these people were. Because when you're under control, they have this really very scary atmosphere about them,
Yeah.
but when I physically saw him, I'm like,
Mm.
Why am I afraid of this guy? He's pressing a button.
Right.
Yeah, he might be able to do something to me, but he's pressing a button. And it felt so freeing to be able to talk back to him and, tell him to go F himself. And, I
Mm.
don't, blah, blah, blah. It was very freeing to me to be able to talk back to this guy and be like, and he pretty much just said, go bother somebody else. I don't care what you say. And he told me that I could tell whoever I want, that nobody's going to believe me. Everyone's going to say I'm crazy. He's like, go ahead and tell people about this. They're going to
Yeah,
think
the
you're
perfect
crazy.
psyop,
Yeah,
right?
he's like, no, nobody's gonna believe you. He's like, they all think you guys lie. They all think you guys pretend. And he's not just talking about me. He's talking about our entire community, the entire,
Absolutely.
targeted disclosure, the programs, MKUltra, Monarch, all of these people. He's saying no one will believe us, and which they know that's a lie now, because they know that we're gaining a lot of validity to what we're saying, and our arguments and our beliefs and our experiences are becoming a lot more rational, especially the way we're speaking about it. And I think they expect us to come off as a certain way, and
Right.
it's not anymore, because we can show that there's proof behind this. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony, especially being whistleblowers and things. Eyewitness testimony is a huge deal. So we're talking about these experiences, and I don't know if anybody knows this. It's very difficult to maintain the memories and have them and be able to talk about it, you know, the same every single time. I don't know if anybody's had that happen before to them, but it can be very difficult, because the memories you have in your mind aren't going to be forever. And so that was part of the reason I wrote the books, as like my own personal testimony to what I was remembering and to what I was experiencing, so I wouldn't lose it, because I do know that it can't last forever. If I have one memory in my mind, it might at some point start to trickle away from me, and I don't want that to happen. So I have this as like a testimony for myself of what I was experiencing, and a lot of it is word for word what I was experiencing during remote viewing and things like that. So I always keep it like that as well.
I think a very important thing, that there's 2 points. The first one, handlers. Um, I think what we have learned, and at least this is a huge takeaway for me, is that it really is hard for a rational mind to understand the malicious malevolentness of being tortured by another person. And but if we look at it through a lens that they obviously and most likely are heavily mind controlled, they could be, programmed. Their mind could have been, fragmented, programmed, and devoid of emotion, which it's hard for rational mind to understand at that level of just devoid of all, you know, humanity, morals, and all of that. To them, it's just a mission. And so, if we look at it through that lens, and again, just somebody that's behind a computer screen that is designing out, acting out, they've got their caseload. We know, I believe it was Karen Melton Stewart, that who was a whistleblower for NSA. She had someone that told her that had all these files in the back of his trunk of his car, and it was, I think, of around 30 or so. Those were all the cases that were assigned to him, and he found her file, and he wasn't going to help her. And so, but her file was there. So again, this is kind of like it's a piece to the bigger puzzle. And the second point that I wanted to make is that they cannot, when we are out here making waves of awareness, if we equate this to a dam that is breaking, it has holes and it's seeping water, and we are penetrating that wall and making bigger holes in it. And then, at some point with those holes of awareness, that's what I would, label those as. These breaches, these leaks within the dam are the holes of awareness that we are beating through this. What was deemed indestructible, this structure that holds back everything. And in this analogy, it would be holding back the truth, right? And here we are, we're penetrating this wall, this dam, and at some point, because we keep going forward with the
Yes.
awareness and the holes, its structure will not hold anymore. And then here comes the flood of truth, the flood of light, and what has all been hidden. And we are in a very prime time of all of these things just coming forward. no action has no action has really been taken on these, truth bombs that we keep getting flooded with, but we're still under that umbrella of secrecy that nobody wants to confirm or deny, mostly deny and shame us still. But here we go. We're still, picking up the sword of truth, and we're still moving forward. And that is where they cannot control that, because there's so many of us that are breaching the structure of this dam of secrecy and lies and manipulation and these programs.
Yes. I was going to talk about, there was two things I wanted to talk about. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's because I feel like these are some of the most important messages I've gotten. And this experience, whether it was astral or through remote viewing or trance, doesn't make it any less, real for me. And I had an experience where I was taken to a base, and I wasn't at Montauk from what I can remember, so I wasn't involved in any type of, conspiratorial, like mind control, and with that goes along with time travel. So my mind control that I experienced was they had a specific agenda for occult and espionage and things like that, and personality profiling they wanted me to complete. But when I talk about how I met a general, and he told me that he was 12 to 15 years in the future. And he said he had been waiting a very long time to be able to speak to me, because it took me that long to kind of get myself to that point where I could receive a message from him. And he's telling the truth. I was very messed up from mind control for pretty much my whole life until, just a few years ago, where I was able to get kind of like my original personality back. And it's been like a constant rediscovery of, meeting my original self over and over. But when I talked to him, he gave me information about how at that point in the future, about 12 years, they're on the verge of a revolution. He said it's gotten pretty bad to where we don't have, you know, very limited rights, and there's a lot of, bad things going on. And his message was that there is a particular group of children that had incarnated here at this time, and they're called the Olympia group. And they're about 11 to 19 years old right now. And they volunteered to come here at a particular time. I know everyone has different belief systems, but this is what he told me. And the reason is, he said, we have to protect them at all costs. He said, if we don't have them for the future revolution, that we're not going to be able to win. And he said, these kids, because they're hackers, he said, right now, these are the computer kids. I know everybody knows those kids that are like tied to the computer and they're always on the computer and electronics. We know those kids. He said, this group of kids, they're hackers. Their brains are like computers, and they're special. And they came here for a special mission, and it was to help us. And he said that if we don't have the Olympia group for that mission, that we will not win the war. And he said the Olympia group is what will turn the tides of the revolution in our favor, and to kind of take back our world. So he had a very important mission for all of us, whoever is involved in disclosure. He said, basically, he said to build the network here. He said, build the network here, maintain the network, and protect the Olympia group. So, and I don't think his message is outrageous, whether it came from an astral experience or not. It's basically saying that, and he did tell us that there's no one that's going to be able to take the reins of this. There's no one that's going to be a major leader. He said, it's all of us here on these, doing this podcast and getting information out to people. He said, there's no white hats. You know how people talk about white hats and things. He said, there is none. There is none. He said, it's you guys. He said, in order to, turn the tides of the revolution, he's like, you start it now. You go out there. And he literally told me, and I told him, I said, I'm just a girl. What am I supposed to do? He said, you go and tell people what I said. You go and tell everybody what's happened to you. And the same thing with my father. He passed away a long time ago, but his main mission for me, he told me, he said, to burn the system down. He said, to go out there. He said, tell everybody what they did and what they made us do. And he said, that's the way, to start the revolution, is for people to know. He said, this is a war of words. This is a war of information. And this is how we're going to start the revolution, is telling people about what happened to us. So in his time, he told me that it's very bleak. And from what I know, in terms of remote viewing and everything, I had a guide told me that this particular timeline was about a 38% chance happening of that. And that's pretty high to me. So it seems like we have work to do. But he also said that Project Oblivion was still in his time frame. And I'm kind of the one that kind of came out with the Project Oblivion information through my remote viewing sessions. And I saw for myself that the handler divisions that are kind of in charge, not just over me, but over a lot of people that were in the programs, whether they were an asset or not, or for some other reason, that Project Oblivion has been given the green light. And what that is that our movement, the disclosure movement in general, has gained too many followers. It's becoming too believable, too rational. And the handler division said that has to be squashed. He said their utmost mission for them is to take us all down. So we're not doing this. We're not on these shows. We're not talking about this information. We're not sharing our experiences, which is very powerful. It's so powerful that they've taken very big measures to try to stop us. That's how powerful just coming on a podcast and talking about your experience, your personal experience is to them. That's how powerful it is. They had to create a whole project just try to stop us. And so
And
what they told me, oh, go ahead.
yes, I was going to play. There were two videos about these are really short. I was going to play them. It
Okay.
does describe the Project Oblivion. I'm going to add it to the stage.
Project Oblivion tactics. There were 1 smear campaigns. There were 2 attempts to control assets with false accusations. There were 3 attempts to discredit testimony of survivors. There were 4 attempts to sabotage relationships with lies and false narratives. For 5, inciting others to contribute to harassment.
I can tell you that we all know what that's all about. We have lived and breathed it in our targeting experience. I'm going to play the other one right now too.
Project Oblivion strategies and manipulation. Abusing the truth, using it against us, using it to their advantage by twisting words, lying, and attempting to recreate the truth according to their agenda.
I mean, how many times have we seen in this community what is the setup? They want us to turn on each other, and
Yes.
because that slows us down, and that is a win for them. To me, I don't care. Everybody can have a different opinion about the targeting and the technology, the tactics, all of these things. To me, what resonates and what is very important to me is that we continue to have our voice and in unity, that we don't turn on each other. We can all, be in this fight together to expose these programs and to not fall for the pitfalls and the traps of, turning on one another. You have to keep your eye on the prize, and what that prize is getting the truth out that these programs exist, where they are, where the origins of them are. We are not mere cattle put on this earth. This is our divine right, is not to be, viewed as cattle and property of any flesh on this earth. And we do not deserve to be experimented on and to be manipulated and coerced and tortured. So we have to get this out and, just agree to disagree. We don't have to hate one another in this fight, is what I'm trying to say, because we are strength in numbers and we have to do our part in this awareness.
And we are the network. Yes.
Yeah,
We are the network here.
network. We're the network. It's very important. I just really feel like this whole experience really just, it took me many years of being in the fire and the pits and, of it. And, you think of it as, forging steel and strengthening. And then I felt like my mission on, in this life was activated, and boom, all of these things started happening, and here's this podcast. I was an introvert. I would have never thought I would be doing a podcast. But that goes to show you, when you have the light and the divine and God in your favor, that the impossible becomes possible. So don't think for one second that your life, your existence can't make a difference. That's a lie that this system and programs want you to believe. Olivia, would you like to expand on that? Or we could talk about your books too, because I want everyone, these videos are excerpts that come from the books. It's such
Yes.
powerful words and
Yeah.
such
Yes. All
wisdom.
of my books and articles are based on my personal experiences with Mind Control, MKUltra, and these programs. And I just wanted to say that Project Oblivion, one of the major targets is going to be, and I feel like I have to tell people, I don't like to keep this from people, whether it's scary or not, but we have to stay strong. It's podcasters. That's what the general told me. And also the handlers said that they are going to be focusing on podcasters. And the reason why is because, and I've experienced this, a lot of the shows I've been on recently, they have given me um, a way, their own neutrality has allowed me to express myself without censorship and without, a lot of pressure to change my story, anything. I'm experiencing a lot of podcasters that are allowing me to just to be open and honest about what I experience. And created a huge momentum for our movement, and with everyone, and they see that, they know that those people need to be stopped. And so podcasters that are allowing us to come on the show and give our information are going to be feeling targeted in terms of their channels and things like that. I've had people, I've been on shows where the people just said my channel's been taken down. I had, with all the people they were having on it, their channels get removed and they get strikes on their channels and things like that, because I just had my entire TikTok banned for no reason. And it was the same videos I have everywhere talking about, the different projects. And none of it is very, I don't know, the information. I'm not putting anything disrespectful or, outrageous. I try to keep it very simple. And I always tell people that the additional details would be in the book, just because I know platforms are kind of conservative or whatever, which they aren't. It's just that they don't want our information on there. So I myself have just had, like, the entire channel I had was just banned permanently, they said. So they're really coming for us. I always say that Oblivion's coming for all of us. So we all have to stick together. And in terms of just allowing each other to use our own voice, everybody's going to have a different story. And I was told that betrayal is one of the major themes of Oblivion, and because they know how destructive betrayal is. So if you end up meeting a few people in the community, you're very tight, you might do a show together, and all of a sudden they turn their back on you, or try to discredit you, or anything. It could be a number of things. You're going to feel that, and they know how destructive that is. And so they said they're going to be sending people to the community to infiltrate in order to create division and order to create issues. They said, the handlers even told me, all we need to do was send one person and you guys all fall like dominoes. They pretty much say we're that pathetic that we can't handle one
Mm.
person coming to our community and, causing problems like a blow up. Like, imagine that one person comes and doesn't like this show, and they start, trying to come in the comments and saying that I'm a fraud, or it just, that's obviously going to create an issue right there. It already plants a seed for other people to see that. They know that. They use that tactic regularly on a lot of different things. It's not out of the ordinary. I've seen it a million times with, even people I know, they are not even saying anything, outrageous. And then people just come in the content, in the comments and said they're a fraud, they're crazy. And already that's creating problems. And to me, I call those Oblivion agents. Whether they
Mhm.
realize it or not, they've been activated to try to stop us
Yeah.
from talking. Because
Activated. Yes.
once you get betrayed and they start saying that, they know how powerful that is. They know how powerful social media is. And a lot of us assets, some of us that were in corporate espionage, I know for myself, we're trained in sociology because we know how strong social engineering is. We know the impact of social control. We know that already. That's why they use it. They're not stupid. That's one thing we know, that they're not stupid. They know they've been doing this for a long time. So they have proven measures that they can use against us. And these are going to be some of the measures they're taking. They're using social media against us. These are own people against us. They use your own friends against you. They use your own, the community will turn on each other. They start to activate people's egos. Egos get involved. Altars get involved. There's all kinds of different measures that they can take to completely destroy us from the inside. And the whole point of me saying this is because if you're aware, then we can do something about it. If we're aware, then we can stop it. And then we can recognize it in ourselves, in our own people, and try to, do something about it then,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, inner work, inner healing is the kryptonite to the grasp the programming tactics over an individual. I have already experienced some of the things, since starting this podcast with, the comments and things that are being said. And the way that I look at it, and the way that again, you have to really know and connect and get rooted into your higher self, because all ego is offense, and ego is, tries to, be the one driving the bus the majority of the time. So it's very important for you to have balance with your higher self, where, it's not going to be rooted into embarrassment and what do other people think. You get to a point where you know who you are and nobody can shake your tree. You understand what I'm talking about? Your roots and knowing who you are, nobody can come up and shake your tree, because you know the truth, and God, the light, knows the truth. And I've already experienced that, and I've already experienced the carousel of characters in my life as well. Some that I thought I knew and just proved themselves not to be. And that is the other thing. You cannot get it hurts, yes. Process it through. You have to know that what you're going through and the mission of this, and to get this out and the exposure of it, is more important than someone that just showed you who they were.
Yeah.
And just let them go.
Oh
And
yeah, somebody in the comment section just said, "Why is my speech rapid and pressurized?" See, a comment like that, somebody could get triggered by that, but I just want to say that's my normal rate of speech, and I have to readily try to stop myself from talking so fast. Everybody has a different tone of voice, and mine is just, especially when I start talking about this, because I get very excited, and I
Mhm.
try to get all my information out as quick as possible, in our limited time we have. So
Right,
it's just,
yeah.
yeah, I just want to say it's just because that's the way I speak. I try to slow myself down, but thank you for noticing that I get a little bit quick moving in my speech.
No, I totally get it. It's a lot, we're in a short window of time, and you have a lot of information, and again, it's like you're excited to get this awareness out there. Um
Yes,
it you know we have to see the big picture, and sometimes it's hard when you're in the weeds, but we have to rise up above this. There are so many ways that they're going to try to make us stumble. Turn on each other is a tactic. This is a tactic. This is even a war
yes,
tactic. You
yes,
know,
it is. Yes, good point.
infiltrate. You know, um, um, a group, and then it falls apart, and then this is all battle strategies. And for us, we are having the battle of being against our mind and our bodies. They're using everything, emotional trigger, trauma, grief, all of the things to elicit that reaction that they want. But those are anchors, and I'm being really strongly led to say all of these reactions that we have are the anchors to this program. If we can liberate ourselves and free ourselves, and I know that you went on that inner healing journey because you wanted to recall the repressed, memories that you had from the programming? Because can you tell us, you did 20 years in this, and then they, put you in retirement, but there was the provision that you could be, recalled at any time. And I think you had also mentioned that in some cases there, you mentioned an insurance company as one, kind of guise that
Yes.
is used. And it made me wonder, is it something that we had done medically or something that involved insurance? And we know that we read through all of these disclosure things that when we're signing off, and it could have been so uh, cloaked in the writing that, we could have consented to research facilities and such. Now, I know that in one of my former episodes, previous episodes, I should say, there the tie to your, DNA information being on an NIH website. I found my own, that was with Don Solomon. I don't doubt without a shadow of doubt, really, that in some way we could have consented to something not realizing it, and there the predators were to latch up on it. So can you describe some of those topics and go into them as
Yes.
well?
Yeah, so some of the documents that I was able to recover with remote viewing, I saw that they were relying a lot on forced consent. So we're having, as children, we're having parents sign for us, and, other people sign for us, or be recruited in very covert ways, through school programs, things like that. So some of the documentation, I saw that you could be coded for re-entry, and I even got my own service record number. Everybody has a number. I have mine. Mine's only a 4-digit number. A lot of people have a 5-digit, but mine was only 4 numbers. And it was because I came from something called a special sector, and that means you kind of have some special importance based on either the abilities you have, or sometimes with your bloodline. And I encourage everybody who thinks they might have been in this program, do your chart, do your genealogy chart. There's I never thought I would find something in just my bloodline. I had no idea that I would discover what I discovered, because we think that, you know, I don't know. I guess I didn't know that somebody actually recommended to me to look into my genealogy, and I did it. It was like a 2-year project, and I actually found what I was looking for. That many of us that were in the programs are distant relatives based on a particular bloodline. A lot of us are. Even my own parents were distant relatives based on their genealogy. So I thought that was really interesting. Like, 2 people from 2 different states were able to find each other, and that had a similar bloodline. Actually distant relatives. So that's something that, if you feel, you're not sure, could I have been involved in this? Sometimes that's kind of where I started at, as I did my chart. It was a 2-year project. So it kind of verified for me that, yeah, what people were saying, that a lot of us were of a particular bloodline that are targeted for programs. And it's really crazy to see that. But
So what do you
going back
mean by
into the
a certain
documentation. Oh yeah.
bloodline of, bloodline that led to what do you mean by that?
So in the disclosure community, there was somebody that kind of came out with the disclosure. His name was Max Spears. He came out a long time ago. He's no longer with us, but he kind of said that many of us that were targeted for programs, even as children, belong to the same bloodline. And it's a lot of us are, I don't know how to say this. It's like not royalty, but relatives of those people that are in power. The royals of England and things. My particular bloodline was through Spanish, French, and Italian royalty. So, and that doesn't mean we're better or worse. Most of us grow up poor. We're not in that, we're not in the front lines of it, but a lot of us are of that same bloodline. So it would be interesting, if you were interested, to go ahead and check out your chart, see if you can find anything like that. And you may
Mm-hmm.
be surprised. A lot of people are finding that a lot of us are related. I've met people that I've, different ages, different states, even, that some of us even had similar bloodlines connected on a genealogy chart.
I think that another possibility too is maybe from childhood they knew based off of, bloodline and genetics, those that might have
Yes.
had, spiritual gifts. And or were had the potential of developing spiritual gifts, and I feel that that can be very threatening, because I think that makes people who have that spiritual gifts and discernment, and they're going to be tougher to crack the code on, and in some ways. I don't know, but I think there's so many different avenues for this. But I know that, with like MKUltra and Monarch, it can awaken those kind of gifts, or it can be programmed in as well. Would you agree with the psychic and spiritual gifts and all of that type of stuff, like with the remote viewing? Again, this was a whole project.
Yes.
um
They're seeking people out, like, they're seeking specifically out, and, I'm sure they had whatever they needed. My father was in the military, and, so and, I think me and you, were we talking about that? How we don't know some of the ways that we're donating our own DNA to people?
right,
And
yeah.
I had brought up the fact that, like, a lot of women, when you don't even realize that when you give birth, you're pretty much donating all they would need to for DNA research or anything. They ask you to what do they call it? Donate placenta and things like that. Imagine, we don't even realize this until, and how many how many of us are giving birth? You know how much information and DNA they have on file if they wanted to use it for anything. If they wanted to find people, if they wanted to do anything,
Hmm.
they have it because we're giving it to them. It
Yeah.
isn't that we don't even realize it. We've all given birth. We've donated placentas. We've donated things.
Blood,
Blood.
and
I
I
mean,
can
you're
tell
giving
you
so
from
much.
that NIH affiliate website, LabCorp is listed there. So I also did 23andMe. I also did a different lab that was a spit analysis. It was DNA. Spit, blood, urine, all of that is DNA, right? So look at all the different avenues. It's not easy. I mean, if they have some kind of contract with an affiliate and you've consented for services, that consent could be farming that information out somewhere else. Unfortunately, that's the cruel reality of it. There's not transparency in that disclosure. It's very cloaked and deceiving.
Yeah, and I think we can't. I for myself can't blame just one agency, for obtaining DNA. We've been giving away samples of ourselves our whole lives through giving blood at the doctor. There's so many different ways. That's why I'm
Hmm.
like, you can't just blame one agency. We've
Yeah.
consented to this in some form or another our whole lives without knowing. On in our defense, we didn't know what we were doing. Your doctor asks you to donate blood for something. You don't know. You're like, oh, okay, yes, I gotta do that today, and I gotta get my medications or whatever. So it's just, there's so many different ways that we just haven't realized that we're donating DNA, blood, all that, our whole lives pretty much, since
Absolutely.
childhood, since you're born, they take blood from you the day you're born. They take blood from you, and we're blaming
Absolutely.
certain agencies, just one agency, and I'm just like, I can't be just one agency because we've been donating parts of ourselves since the day you're born.
And absolutely. There's just so many avenues for that. I mean, even fingernail is DNA.
Gracious.
I've mentioned this before because there is a Rife device called Spooky 2. And Spooky 2 has a device where you can put either your blood or a fingernail, and it can remote connect to you and send you frequencies. Wrap your head around that. I found that,
Yes, I've used that before. I've
yeah.
used it when I was being targeted. I didn't know what it was. This was before I knew what I was, and I was trying anything to help with my health. I had failing health systems really badly, and I thought that could help. So I myself donated fingernails to that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there are some. there's a couple of people that offer that service that have a thing, but it's instead of a server room, it's just a bunch of remote spooky 2 devices where you can
Yes.
send them your fingernail and get your, but you have to trust that the person on the end of that is sending you good
Yeah.
frequencies,
And I'm
healing
sure there's
frequencies.
some people that have very, very good intentions, but the point that we're trying to make to everyone is that we don't realize how much, consent we've given by offering these donations, different in different ways, that we didn't realize it. And not to blame us, just for us to be more aware, of what we're doing.
It's amazing how much blind trust we've had in a system that has failed us. And
Yes.
we are learning more and more about how corrupt and malevolent this system is. It really isn't about protecting us. It's about using us and experimenting on us. I think that we're headed into a day and age that everyone will be remotely, surveilled and under that cloak of being targeted. We are, for whatever reason, we got that that introduction and we're aware. And with that introduction and our awareness of this and what has happened to us, we have, to me, a duty and responsibility to speak out and spread the truth. Because as Olivia said, without somebody moving forward, especially in this age where the organic human is just slipping away, right? And the children, to give them a fighting chance. I didn't have any children, and I knew that as a young girl that I would not. And I really do think that, and I look back on my life as now I understand why, right? I did have an elderly mother that I had to take care of, and I felt like, well, maybe that was my plan. But now I see it kind of differently, that in this day and age and everything, to be in this fight and spreading this awareness and all of this, I think it just unfolded, as it should. And that's the way that I look at it. But again, we have such a responsibility, those of us, to spread the knowledge. And I know that sometimes it can be a little intimidating to come on a podcast and share that truth. And where do you start? And how is your story going to relate? But the way that I see it is, anybody that's speaking out about what's happened to them, this is recordable, traceable history. And it's so
Evidence.
important.
It's
It
evidence.
is. It's evidence that all of us have taken the step of action to spread the truth. And our government did not pay attention to us. Media did not pay attention to us, but we kept going. And we're continuing to make those holes in the dam, and we're going to breach the structure of it to the point to where it can no longer be deniable. It will be so profound. I wanted to bring up on the screen all of your social media accounts. Now, you mentioned that the TikTok had recently
Yes.
had been taken down, but
Yes.
Instagram.
Yeah, I have a backup account on TikTok, but they won't really let me. Every time I try to post anything, they won't even let me get a view on it, like very low views. So I haven't been putting a ton of work on the TikTok until things change. But I do have all these others, and I do weekly new articles all the time on Substack, and all the information. If you're not a reader, definitely you can find all my videos. So that's a way to get the information if you don't consider yourself a reader and that's not the media you like. You can find all the videos on my YouTube too. I put all the information, and a lot of it comes straight from my books. So if you're not a reader, definitely check it out there and get the information.
Absolutely. And you've got a Substack account. That one is a subscribed account.
It's both. I put free articles and
Okay.
others for people that subscribe. Yep, there's both.
Awesome. And then the X account is O James Gray Mouse.
Yes.
And your videos are out on that. That's where I was able
Yep.
to download these clips.
Yeah, they're
And
pretty much
then,
everywhere. The videos are everywhere. You can find
yeah,
them if you really
awesome.
want. If you want
Okay.
the
Yeah, I
information, yeah, it's there for people. Yep.
did you create those videos? They're so well done.
Yeah, and I do all my own writing. It's all original writing. So anything in the videos is something I wrote myself. So I keep it all in, I make the images for it, based on what I'm feeling that day or whatever.
That do you have time where I could play the handler ones? There was 2 handler ones that I
Oh yeah,
want
sure.
to play.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this one is I'm going to play, I called it Handler's Way. Let me remove this so I can bring it up.
The handlers say their money gives them power. They say they have everything they need to make us assets suffer. They utilize technology, manipulation, and mind control. This is a war of words, a war of information. Expose them all. Tell your stories. Stay strong. Full disclosure is the way.
Absolutely. Full disclosure is the way. And then I wanted to bring up the contract, the handler and the contract.
Handlers say that there is no escape from what they believe we have agreed to. They are forced contracts. There is a written clause in the handler's files. They involuntarily obtain consent of assets. Upon reaching this agreement, the asset will comply with all standards and executions necessary and written by the whole of the law. Any failure to comply with mission values will result in termination. The handlers want to maintain full control, but we have awakened and do not consent. Keep searching. Full disclosure is the way.
Absolutely. These videos are just so well done and such a powerful message. They're great
Oh, yeah.
reminders. They're
Thank you.
great
And
reminders.
actually, the information in that, I found a clause. When I said that, about the clause in the file, I actually remote viewed that. See, I broke into a base and stole that information, and I saw that they had written that clause in that we're all signing somehow in different programs. You are forced to sign that. So you're pretty much consenting to be controlled and monitored for the rest of your life. And that if you don't comply with it, that you agree to be terminated and not fired, if you know what I mean. You agreed to that in written consent. Say, go ahead and do it. Meet my end if I don't follow the rules. Isn't that insane that they were forced to sign that? And they say that the handlers told me that a lot of these documents that we're forced to sign, they will hold up in all courts. So if we try to do some type of class action lawsuit or something, go ahead and try. You've given us your consent.
It just makes you wonder at what avenue where I think there's just so many avenues of where that consent, I use that word
Yes, it's forced
consent.
consent and it's all manipulation. It's covert, it's coerced. I don't feel like I gave any consent to anything. I was forced with either mind control or some other threat or something else to, you know, consent to it. It wasn't original. It's not authentic consent, in my opinion.
I think from this, it's from now forward, anything that a doctor gives you to sign or a lab facility, read how many times have we been guilty of just
Yes.
like, oh gosh, let me just sign this?
Yes.
Well, I've done it, but it just makes me wonder, just reading through it and maybe just crossing out anything that seems cloaked and initialing it and to sign it to just move forward, because they're not going to give you service, right?
Yes.
Unless you sign these documents. And HIPAA, what a load of crap HIPAA.
Yes.
It is just falsitude. Because when I saw my information out on a government website to the point of, talking about, family history and my DNA, I'm like, well, that's just crap. It's garbage.
Mhm.
These forms that we sign don't mean anything when you see your information out. So that tells me something else I had signed must have gave over the rights to it. But when I started digging into all of the entities that were tapping into my DNA, It was research universities from within the United States, outside of the United States, and lab facilities.
Have
So
you done your family history chart?
I've done. I know that a family member did quite a bit on my mother's side, and I mean, it's just a huge stack of documents, and I
Yeah,
probably need to
because
go
if
through
they're
that.
looking into your DNA, that would be something not just for your own personal verification or validation, not for anyone else. I'm just saying if you ever felt, inclined to look into it because they're searching into your DNA, that would be something that maybe like give you that second layer of like, okay, this is real. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've done the own research
Right.
with my own hands. This is real.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's just, it's pretty amazing at the levels of what they come up with to just gain information on us.
It's all about
Um,
power and control and conquest. From what I know, from what these factions are battling behind the scenes, it's power, control, conquest, and huge amounts of money. And the money they feel gives them their power. That's why I say it's kind of connected. They feel like it's if they lost all their money, we would gain an upper hand. So
yes.
that's what we're battling right now.
Do you have time to talk to, how you discovered that there were government occult programs tied into the targeting as well? And
Yes. Okay. As long as it's appropriate, yeah, I'll give a trigger warning to people if this is not within your belief systems, you have a right to, turn the channel or turn this off or whatever if it's not within the realm of your belief system. I'm not particularly religious. I call myself spiritual, so I have a different perspective on these experiences that I've had. Um so when I was at the psychiatric hospital after I had been completed the MKUltra and Mind Control, and they considered me to be a success. The main programmer, the woman, Mrs. W, under hypnosis, she had found so many things inside me. And how do I know that she found that? Because I can find it now with hypnosis, and I see what I can do and how far I can travel with hypnosis. So I'm sure she took it as far as she could, and she saw things, and she ended up sending me out to another person. I don't I don't really know if he was a psychiatrist or what he was, because when I went to his office, it did kind of look like more like an attorney's office, the furniture and everything. It looked like an office building. It didn't look like a doctor's office. And when I got there, it was an old, elderly, frail man, and he wore these little tiny wire rim glasses, very thin. It's almost like he looked like he was in his 80s or something, very old. And he had another couple there, and it was a man and a woman, and um I think they were like they're in their like early 30s, and they both had some type of albino condition, and they didn't talk very much. But the man's name was Dr. Green, and I'm not sure. I only know him as Dr. Green, but I know a lot of people refer to Dr. Green as another name for Mangala. But when I was there, he told those two people to do an exam on me. And they did this kind of like very weird exam. They were looking in my ears and, in my eyes. And then they told me to open my mouth. And then when they did, they said, yes, they told Dr. Green, they said, yes, we can see the thing inside her. And so that's when I was taken into this program called Project Traveler. And what they wanted me to do is because of my past lives and what I had been before, they figured they could try to control some of that. And they were kind of wrong in some of their assessments, because they thought that I was somebody that was possessed or maybe had some type of entity attachment. And trust me, I was afraid of this stuff my whole life. And they thought that they could kind of gain control over that, and they were wrong. It was just something that was in my cellular level that they saw, and they kind of got that energy of something that I had been in the past. And in my personal belief system, I personally believe in reincarnation because I've seen, some of my past lives with my own psychic abilities. I was able to see that. So for me, it's a reality. And what they wanted me to do is later in adult years, they'd have me be contracted for some what we would call like elite families here in the United States. And I would get hired for a weekend, sometimes, a little bit longer, but they paid a lot of money to the Monarch Solutions agency in order to have me there for a weekend. And what they would want to do is they would have me there, and they would use my psychic ability to open up to various energies in the universe, and negative and positive. I don't really want to judge what they are. Um So there would be times where these people, I was going to talk about one particular family I knew. They lived in New York, and I was there for a weekend. They paid a lot of money because they had made some type of discovery in the 1500s. So this is something that came down their generation. They call it a generational familiar. That's what they called it. And they felt like if I could channel this particular energy, that they would be able to interact with their God and who they consider their God to be. So that's what they had me do. They would have me open myself up, and I particularly call it spirit hosting. It's I let something take over my body and speak or interact, step into the world for a time. And that's what they wanted to do. And they literally wanted to have dinner with their God. So once I let this thing take over my body with my psychic abilities, I had to go over to the table and eat with them. And they were not liking what they saw, because if you open yourself up to something, you let something take over your body. I'm not in there to control it. So this thing, whatever was inside me, was like ripping and tearing at their food, kind of like acting like an animal. But,
Hmm.
they had their mouths hanging open, and the thing that was inside me was not happy with their reaction. And it said, how dare you call a god down here and, disrespect me like this? That's not the reaction they're hoping for if these people consider this thing their god. And these people think that this particular entity has maintained their power and wealth throughout the years. And actually, the entities say that he has no idea what they're talking about, because he doesn't do anything. He just came for the worship and the reverence, because that's how he sustains himself. He said he doesn't give them anything, that the reason they're rich and powerful is because they were born rich and powerful. And if you take away all their money, they won't have anything. He said it's just carried down through the line. The wealth is carried over from each person in each generation. So he said he had nothing to do with it. So some of these people are creating these huge ritualistic aesthetics, and that they think that this entity wanted. And he said he doesn't really, it's not really a thing for him. He likes particular things. He likes to be given that, like, I don't know, praise, that he's something big, because in his mind he considered himself an elder god, something like that.
Hmm. So do you think, and these programs like the Monarch programs, do they purposely try to accelerate or activate these gifts within the children that are a part of it?
Oh yes. Oh yes. They've made some huge discoveries. They probably didn't know that. And who would know that some little kid could do stuff like this? Even now, when I see myself do it now, it's still amazing to me every time I do it. Imagine if when I was doing it when I was a little kid. It's just really crazy to even think about it. Sometimes I have a hard time, like, when I get out of a trance and I've done it for like 6 hours straight, and I'm sitting there just like dumbfounded. I'm like, I cannot believe I can do this. Like, I still do that. Like, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I can do this. I can't believe all the information that I can get. It's just weird to me.
I know that there have been accounts where, children are just such pure vessels. And I think as we get older, some, gifts that children are born in with, they just kind of dissipate. And that's all due to, just societal programming, and it's not, well received, right? I've heard multiple times where children might say that they were being visited by, an elderly, grandmother, grandfather, or a family
Hmm.
member that has passed. And, as time goes on, they don't talk about those things anymore. And this happens, I have witnessed this, that, discussion coming from, children multiple times. In addition, even, some people I had, I was aware of a child talking about, very, 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 very specific detail about a former existence where his family had died in a fire. And and then again, as the child grew up, they never mentioned it again. But this was verifiable in terms of proximity, the address, and all of that. And it ended up being true that there was a fire and there was a family and such. So to me, when I'm aware of these, but I know that there have been other reportings of it and such. But it's something I think so pure about, the children, and that as they get older, then those occurrences just kind of dissipate. So I think that is the reason why in these Monarch type programs that they take children in that pure vessel state to splinter into different personalities and training and in the altars and such.
And they used what they found in hypnosis. She used everything she found against me.
Mm,
Everything. Like, if I talked about who I was before in a past life or something, even as a child in those sessions with her, she used it to traumatize me more. If I died a particular way in a past life, they would use that in the trauma-based mind control. They would traumatize me with it. Like, there was a particular life where in the 1400s in Italy, I was charged as a witch during the Inquisition because I had a medium type ability, mediumship abilities. And these men came to my house. I had two children then. They came to my house, they punched me in the face, they drugged me away and took me to a dungeon and tried to force me to admit that I was conspiring with the devil. And I never did. And I remember being hung from the ceiling and with no clothes on, and I actually died from starvation and dehydration, not necessarily being burned or the torture. It was from dehydration and starvation. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because they must have heard me say that I was hanging from my arms, because they hung me from my arms in different times when they wanted to torture me, because they've heard me say that. So it double seals the trauma within you, and that even further creates that chance for that altar to be, built up into something they want. So they're using everything they find, everything you say as a child, everything you do, they've used it against you. And for me, I've turned that around. I've used my whole journey of discovering all the things, good and bad, about myself, just to be honest and talk about it straightforward. I do in my books. I don't hold back on anything. I tell it straight. How I found it is the way I relay it in the book, because that's the way to maintain my authenticity, is to talk about it straight out and not to be afraid to discuss that real part of myself that may not have always been a good person in a past life. And
mhm.
a lot of us had experienced that. If you have that in your belief system, I'm saying, we experience that. And they target people now based on their past lives, because if they can find it from me, they can find it from a lot of different assets or targeted people, you know. And it's just, I want to be able to say that with all the work I've done and all the things I've discovered and the different entities that I've let use my body to speak, I do want to tell people, no matter what your belief system is about entities or spirits and the dark side of it, there's nothing to fear in this world or the next. I can tell you that there's no reason for you to be afraid. There is no reason to be afraid. And I feel like they control us with fear by being so afraid of it, like, oh, they're gonna take over my body. I let them do it voluntarily to get information, and nothing happens to me. I wouldn't encourage anybody else to try it, but I'm just saying there is nothing to fear. I've gone to the outer realms, and there's nothing to fear there. You're way more powerful than you know. If you didn't want something in your space, all you would have to do is say, to get away from me, get out of my space, and that is powerful right there. All you'd say is that.
Yes, and I mean, it's true. I mean, this experience has just taught me to have an open mind. I don't want to suppress any, information that can, um, you know, lead to more truth and such. So, I really appreciate you, coming and telling your story, but I would like to know, I keep saying if you have just a little more time,
No
but
problem.
what led you up into chasing the healing that you've received and unlocking your memories from the regressive hypnosis?
It that was probably something that saved my life. I consider it, and the person that helped me, I work very closely with Misha Johnston. She's in the community as well, and she has a lot of books, and we've worked very closely. And I really feel like hypnotic regression saved my life. I was the most unstable. I wasn't able to even get myself, together enough because of my constantly shifting alters, because I wasn't able to control that. And once I finally got a handle on the hypnosis and being able to travel the fire and all the abilities I have, I went into a session and asked all my alters to retire themselves. And at the end of everything, a lot of times we go through life thinking that our alters are trying to kill us, control us, harm us. And in the end, they all rallied on my side and agreed to go to sleep so that I could live my life with my original self. They agreed to it. They said, yes, it's our time is over. You go ahead. And so now it's a constant, like I said, it's a constant rediscovery to my original self because it was stolen from me so early. So I have to figure out who I was supposed to be before all of this happened, before MKUltra, before mind control. Who was I before that? And that's my personal discovery, that I continue on that journey to try to figure out who I was meant to be.
That's amazing that you felt very led to do that, and the work that you've achieved through that, and being able to self-discover. And I think that that's an important message for the entire community. We have been, shamed with everything that they can use against us to invoke fear, panic, anxiety,
Yes.
control, manipulation, and threats. We have been handed it all. But the key to unlocking and loosening that anchor of all of that off of you is the inner work and the healing. And if you're not pursuing that, and healing can be, it could be many different avenues, but putting yourself, and your self-worth back in the place where it deserves, in the spotlight, and shining on you, and your awareness, and growing. We have to do this to reclaim our self power, because when this started, our power was, taken away from us. And this is what the controllers don't want us to do, is to heal ourselves. And I encourage you to, experiment and find the healing, the inner healing that works and resonates with you, because each time that you put the focus back on you and your self-worth and your healing, you are, causing distress to a handler. So
Right.
they're not going to get their bonus. That's what I say. They're not getting no bonus off of me. So they are not going to succeed. They are just going to sit there and spin their wheels and watch their lives wither away. And maybe one of their other cases, they might have a little bit more success and fruit there, but they will not have any from me. So, well, this has been a really great discussion. I want to put up the slide for your book, which is available on Amazon. And it's in 3 different formats. You can get it in paperback, Kindle, or audiobooks, which I love that you have all 3 of those formats. Some people are more audio, some want a
Yes,
tangible
exactly.
book. Yeah. So that is great. We've had a lot of people chatting too. If you want to see about
Yeah, is
bringing
there
up
any
one.
questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, let me take a look through here.
I see one that says, "How is this valuable to the military?" Power.
Oh,
Power.
yes, that one right
Power.
there. Got it. Yes, how power and
Power.
control.
Yes, they use us up until there's nothing left in order to maintain power.
And
And
somebody's making money off of
yeah,
that.
there's a lot of private military groups that we're not even aware of, that you don't even know the name of, that are doing a lot of this work. There's private intelligence groups that you don't even know the name of, that are still doing this work.
Here's one. I know you had mentioned, it was in one of your videos, about the GATE program. This one says GATE program started as far as in the 60s.
Yeah. So, and the GATE program's still going on. Just even this year, they're still targeting and looking for your children If you are in the programs, they're looking at targeting your children. So that's something that we all need to be aware of, that they're still looking into this. And you might not know because they're not sending home a permission slip saying, hey, can your child take part in the GATE program? They just put them in it. And you don't know till the year's over that they were in the program probably.
Wow. And Katya says she was in the GATE brigade, a kid, and it caused her to have out of body experiences. When I can attest that when this targeting started on me, I was having some out of body experiences too. I had some time loss, and I would just be laying on the couch, and my mother may have been in the room. She was elderly, and I helped take care of her needs and everything. And I would literally be on the couch. My eyes are wide open, and I could not move my body. And that happened to me multiple times during this experience in the beginning, to where I was there, fully alert, eyes open. And so the only thing I could do was moan, could barely,
It sounds
because
like a trance. It sounds like a trance state.
yeah, it was just, but everything was, I was fully cognizant of everything going on. My mother would hear the sound that I was making going, are you okay? And I had to fight to regain the rest of my body. And I think that's just something else that they were doing to
Yeah.
me remotely, messing with me in that regard.
Sometimes I get like that. My speech will be affected if I switch into an alter that I can't control. It'll affect my speech. Like the way I talk now, it would be like I barely can form the words. That's what it reminded me of when you said you were like making sounds. Like sometimes if I
Yeah.
switch an alter without, pretty quickly, and then I'll have a trouble forming the words at first.
It was like I just woke up, but my body was not on board with it. I couldn't move a hand, a foot, nothing. I just had to kind of fight my way out of it. It
And
was,
sometimes we can trance out into different parts of your body, but not your face. If I want to put something into a trance, I can pretty much trance only one arm if I wanted to, like to where it's paralyzed. With my mind, I can just paralyze one of my own arms. So imagine what you could do if you somehow were activated by something you saw on TV, something on the radio, something on your phone, and a lot of flashing light, that'll do it without people even realizing that some type of certain flashes of light actually put you into alter or a trance. You don't even know. Like a red light flashed across my eye, I'd be out. I'd probably go straight into a trance or feel like it's coming or want to switch and alter. And so that's something I learned, that a lot of different types of flashing lights are probably what they used in the psych hospital in order to program certain parts of my brain. And it still affects me, different types of flashing lights.
I've heard that about the flashing lights. I've known people who they just cannot be around a bunch of flashing lights. For
Yeah,
me personally,
that'll do it.
yeah,
Trance.
mhm.
Yeah.
And then keeper of the flame said bloodlines and also specific blood groups for specific dormant activated DNA. I believe that too,
Yeah.
about some of the dormant stuff that can be, key signaled and activated in us. And I think it's all part of some of this experimentation that they do.
Yeah, and they're giving you a lot of different when you're in the programs, they give you a lot of injections, a lot of chemicals. You're pretty much, and once you're out of the program and you're a little bit older, you might look a little bit younger in the outside, but the inside of you is pretty much rotting away. A lot of us have like internal issues, huge issues with your organs and things like that, like your liver get affected by it because of all the chemicals we had as children.
Yes. Here's one more I brought up. They control my actions. How do they control others so much more than others? How do they control my physical and mental actions so much?
They control my actions. How do they control others so much more than others? It depends on the person. Like it might look like I can talk rationally now, but maybe later I had something that happens. Everybody's so different, and each person's trauma is different. Each person, the way they cope is different. The way they were involved in programming was different. All the mind control is different. It's all individualized. I mean, there are some similarities, but in my experience, listening to people and, meeting a lot of people in the different programs, a lot of it is individualized to that person, even your particular type of programming.
Yes, and I think that, as their subject, like the targets are their subject, they will use as part of the manipulation and invoking trauma and despair and everything. They will use people around you, and they, probably unbeknownst to them, are being mind controlled and manipulated. So there may be something internal dialogue, because we all know the many flavors of what being a targeted person is about. They could be having that internal voice to all of a sudden sparking doubt about you, and or lies and manipulations. They're having that, remote messaging, that subliminal messaging at them, and you just never know. You just never know, because they are probably playing on their insecurities and fears and all that deception that they use on you. So when people come and go, and I've had, some recently, I just let them go, because if it's meant to be, they'll come back. That's the way that I look at it. It's sad to see
Yeah.
that. It's sad. But sometimes you have to look at it about not trying to chase a door that's closed,
Right.
and just pray about it. And if it's meant to be, then they'll come back. They might be able to see the light. Because we don't know. It could be very well that they are being mind controlled and manipulated remotely about you, because they're trying to isolate their target, right? And
Yes.
they want us isolated. They want to discredit us. They want us to act out in a way that will get us labeled. We know the whole 9 yards of how all of this works. So just take that into consideration as well. It could very well be that they are being manipulated in some way as part of what they are doing to you. So again, it has been so good having you here.
Thank you.
I've really really enjoyed reading the writings that you've had out there in your post and the videos. They're very, very good reminders for us all about the mechanics, and we just never know. We find every day there's just so many layers to this targeting, and sometimes we can forget it can start back all the way to childhood. And in your case, from just the age of 7, being put into that psychiatric facility for the programming and the torture that you went through during that. And all I could say is I thank you for your bravery and getting this message out. And because this is what it takes. And this is, if we don't continue to do this, then there will be no future for humanity. And we play a very important role in getting this awareness out. And never think that for 1 second that your voice is not powerful, that your life doesn't matter, and that your story doesn't matter. It does. So please give it a voice, and give it an outlet. And it is recordable, traceable history.
There was just one thing in the chat that
Sure.
I just wanted to validate it for the person because it caught my eye.
Sure.
Somebody said that they were offered $200,000 a year to be a handler. And I just want to say that, yes, they did that in 2022, the exact amount, and it was from a company called Kruger. So they are looking for assets, prior assets that are older now, to train the new assets, because they're using a different type of programming that is not as effective as trauma-based mind control. They're now using a lot of chemicals and VR, but it's not as effective. It's not giving the same results as they had when they were using trauma-based mind control. So they're offering $200,000 contracts, which is a complete BS, to people that were prior assets in order to train some of the newer assets. So I just wanted to validate it for that person, that I had to experience something similar.
Wow. And what was the name of this project again? Kruger, you said?
Yeah, it's a mercenary company. They're called Kruger. They have two different factions. One is international, one is domestic. So
$200,000
yeah,
to
and
be a
yeah,
handler.
yeah, they did. They do. They're looking for prior assets. So that might be a clue to somebody that they may have already been an asset before.
Wow. See, I mean, this is it's been so good having you, because this information, it makes total sense, but to me, again, for somebody to say, oh, $200,000, but
It was exactly that amount. That's why it caught my eye. I was like, oh no.
wow, wow, that's amazing. To me, there's no price tag that could ever be thrown at me to
No,
do something
because
like this to
you're
somebody.
consenting to slavery. Yeah, it doesn't matter how
Yeah,
much it is. You're consenting to modern day slavery. So always say no. Just say no to that stuff.
I mean, because you're locked in, the it's like, joining the mafia. You're never going to go out unless it's, with a chain cinder block on your ankle thrown over a bridge. There's no, I mean, I don't mean to be graphic, but
Yes.
there's no way of getting out of something like that. And, unless, it
It's
is
not worth it. It's not worth it. Yeah,
it's
it's not
not
worth
for
it.
your own soul.
Not for
You've
any
got,
amount of money. It's modern day slavery.
I could see where it would be really enticing to someone, but they
Yes,
don't not understand the ramifications of making that kind of contract with the devil, because that's what it
exactly.
is. You're
I said
making a
no, somebody
contract
else
with the
can do it. I
devil.
said no, and you can too. No.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, thank
Wow.
you for having me. This was it's so cool to be able to talk like this and talk openly about the programs.
Yes, and if you don't mind, I did not do this at the beginning. I want to just mention upcoming guest. Oh goodness, I didn't even finish my slides, so never mind. I have it written down. I got so enthralled with all your videos and getting them loaded, I didn't even finish it. But I'll tell you, next Sunday is going to be Darren Langston. On the 17th, it's going to be Christopher Metlin. On the 24th, it's going to be Ed Zemko. And wrapping up the month on the 31st will be Wendy Myers. So tune in, and always, please stay connected. Get out there and visit tievents.org, because every day of the week there's something where you can plug into the community. If you're having a bad day, you're having, being hit with directed energy, you're just having audio overload from V2K, no matter what it is, or you're just feeling down and needing connection, visit tievents.org. And again, Olivia, this has been so enlightening, because I think you gave such a different perspective that we have not typically heard as a community. So I commend you for your bravery in getting this information out and sharing your story. And thank you so much.
Thank
You've been
you for
such a
having me.
blessing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining in this week, and hope that you're able to next week. God bless, and I pray for each and every one of you for your own personal liberation and awareness, and getting and stepping back in to your life, and reclaiming your birthright and your healing. We will rise up as a community, and we will not stop. We will continue to let all know about what has been done to us, and we will make a difference. We need to do this. It is important for the future of humanity and the children today. God bless everyone. Thank you.